The Board of Ellis County Commissioners meeting will now come to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Donna, could you call the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Dean Hazelhorse.
Present.
Chair, Commissioner Butch Schleier.
Present.
Commissioner Destin Roth.
Present.
You have a quorum present, Chair.
Thank you. Any changes to the order of business?
I believe 3 executive session.
Three executive sessions for you.
Okay.
And them down to Dustin.
Here you go, Dustin. Prior minutes. I think February 3rd, is that the only one?
That- the
Uh-huh.
third,
Yeah, February 3rd, okay with you guys?
Yeah.
Fine with me.
Yep, me too. Okay. Consent agenda. I need a motion for the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through G.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-2. Or, excuse me, 3-0. Okay, issues from persons not on the order of business. Sandy.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Sandy Jacobs. I'm Executive Director of Heartland Community Foundation, and I'm here to follow up with the letter that I had sent to the clerk and also emails that I shared with each of the commissioners. I appreciate the time on the agenda. I think you're all aware of Heartland Community Foundation in our community. We've been organized for 13 years now. In that amount of time, we've given out over $2.1 million in grants to all nonprofit organizations. The Dame Jean Hansen Foundation 3 or 4 years ago, we get $50,000 twice a year from the Hansen Foundation for each of the counties we serve, which is Ellis, Trego, and Rooks. But we never knew what we were going to get the following year. They said, you know, that really isn't fair to you guys. You kind of need a bit more to go on. And they said, I'll tell you what, we will do another $50,000 for you, but you have to find the match dollars in your community. And if you do that, we'll guarantee you will continue our programs for the next 5 years. So we're in year number 4 of that, and I'm back, as I have been in previous years, asking for a leadership gift from the county, go along with the city. The city gives a $5,000 leadership gift, which is matched, and the county has given a $5,000 leadership gift, which is matched. In hopes, I came before you this year in hopes of understanding you had some cuts you had to make, that maybe this would help in that area. Being able to do $5,000 and get a $5,000 match from the Hansen Foundation would make a huge difference in the community. The interesting thing that has happened is in that time, when they initially gave us the month to do, we have just 1 month to do it in, and we chose February. The interesting thing was they always said we'll match it to $5,000 per gift, up to like $50,000. Now they'll match whatever amount anyone wants to give. So if you're of a mind that $50,000 is something you're interested in, they'll match that all. So I thought that would be interesting. The legacy fund that is formed from these gifts that are matching the money raised in our community, the matching gift from the Hansen Foundation, now has a total in that particularly legacy fund that is specific to Ellis County of over $350,000. This year we'll add another $100,000. Last year we gave the first grants out of that foundation. That's the first time we were able to do any grants with over $8,500 just on our own. And that's our goal, is to grow our foundation of a size that we don't have to depend on the likes of him. So again, I'm here to humbly request that be added to your agenda and budget this year.
I think it's a good program, Sandy. You've done a lot of good with that. Thank you for all your time you volunteered. I know it pays really well, so. But and I appreciate that. I think it's a great idea, gentlemen, to give that back, especially with Hansen Fund matching that for Ellis County.
Yeah, I'm admissible to that. I just, if Darren can find a spot where we can use that in our contingency, and great organization. Thank you for all that you do, and I think we could probably get it on next agenda. You need it in the month of February.
It has to be in the month of February, correct?
Be tonight.
So
Be tonight. I'll go along with my fellow commissioners, but I do have a concern. $5,000 after I just heard the presentation on the budget. The budget's bleak for Ellis County, and there's no way to get around that. And you're going to ask for this again next year, is that correct, Sandy?
We'll have one more year.
One more year? So fellow commissioners, I'd like to see, if we do this tonight, to put it in the budget for next year, to not have to look at contingency.
I think that's a good idea. As outside, we just have to, I believe our outside agencies get funded in January, so if we just delayed your check or something, that might be the best way to go about it.
For next year?
For our budget, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I do appreciate that. And when I say one more year, I never want to be held to that, because if I have my way, I'll be back in front of the Hanson Foundation asking for that match year after year after year.
Yeah.
So as long as I'm around to do it anyway.
I'm fearful if our sales taxes don't pass, I don't know how I could validate it to the
I
employees of
understand.
Ellis County.
Completely understand, sir.
Do I need a motion?
I move
I was going to make a comment in regards to the 5,000, where we actually would take it from. Really, there's only two options off the top that I could really give justification to. One is the contingency, and the other is the administrator's budget. I know the commission's intention is to hire a new county administrator. However, with the time frame that we're looking at, I think it would be better spent using that 5,000 out of the administrator's account this year, and keep the contingency open just in case, since it is early in the year, that we keep those funds in there for now, and the $5,000 wouldn't impact when you could hire a new administrator.
Okay.
Okay. I move that we approve $5,000 in funding to the Heartland Community Foundation, the funding to be used out of the administrator's budget.
Second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you so much, commissioners, and thank you for your service.
Sandy?
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is the annual CIC renewal. Mike?
How about monthly departmental report?
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, we'll come back and do that. Come on up, Mike. Yeah, I had it sitting up here.
I know, I've done that too, Butch.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mike Leiker, Ellis County IT Director. You have before you the 2020 CIC Peopleware Annual Agreement. This is the agreement that we have every year with CIC for our ERP software, which includes our payroll, our financial accounting or tax accounting, and register of deeds software, pretty much the bulk of what we do administratively. The annual Peopleware agreement amount for 2020 is $61,540, which you may or may not remember. That's actually $55 less than last year, which $55 isn't much, but we're used to industry standards about an 8% increase every year. So to me, that's kind of a good thing, even if it's just $55. But this is the agreement that we signed with CIC to continue to get support, maintenance, software upgrades, the ones that everybody gets on an annual basis. So it's shouldn't be new to you all, but I just have that before you to sign the agreement, and I will entertain any questions if you have any.
Mike, is their support good? Have you heard any complaints about their support?
I have not heard complaints. It has continued to increase. The clerk's office is probably the office that gives me the most feedback, but it's been good. So I think everybody is satisfied with the software and with the upgrades that we do get. I might also mention they also take care of, as part of that agreement, all the tax types of things at the end of the year that we have to submit to the state. They handle all of that, set up those forms and everything. So I think we've had good success with those. Payroll, the W-2s and everything come out okay. So I have not heard any complaints.
What did that program cost us total when we originally got it?
Don't remember exactly off the top of my head. We didn't actually, the fee that we paid was for installation and training. I believe they're what they told us and what a lot of them are doing now. They tell you don't pay for the software, you pay for installation and training, and then you pay your annual maintenance agreement, which you're paying for the software. But I believe, I honestly don't remember off the top of my head what our original payment for installation and training was on that. I'd have to get back with you on that.
I was thinking it was over 100,000, wasn't it? Or not? Is that even, for some reason I was thinking it was like 146 or something, but maybe not.
I'm sorry, I honestly don't recall what it
Fine.
was, but I'd hate to misquote.
No problem, understand.
Mike, is this in line with other software of this type as far as an annual agreement?
It is. I was just visiting with the IT director for the city of Hayes about this last week, and their annual maintenance is almost identical within, a few $100, I think, or maybe $1,000. So,
Gentlemen, do I hear a motion?
I move that the commission approve the payment of $61,540 for the 2020 CIC Peopleware Agreement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0.
2-0.
2-0?
2 to 1. I'm a nay vote.
You're a nay vote? Oh, okay. Motion carries 2-1. I thought you said aye. Excuse me, Dean.
Not a problem.
thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, the monthly departmental report. Did you guys get a chance to review it?
Good. Very good, like always, Butch.
Very good.
Comprehensive.
Great job.
Employees are working hard.
I do a good job all the time submitting that. A lot of good information.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the dump truck purchase options. Bill Ring.
Good evening, Commissioners. Bill Ring, Director of Public Works. Before you tonight is a follow-up to the Commission approving the purchase or the ordering of 2 new dump trucks. And at that meeting, it was discussed looking at various finance options as opposed to paying cash. I had brought out that evening that PACCAR, the parent company for the dealership, had offered us an original 5.25%, which most dealerships have some kind of financing that's out there. And then I went ahead at your behest and contacted, and there's an attached letter that was sent to all the financial institutions in the city requesting what they would like to offer us for financing. With that, and there's also a consolidation sheet explaining, or at least showing, what the rates that were offered by the various institutions that's included with that. So the lowest one that was offered came from First Kansas Bank, and they offered us 2% fixed for 60 months or 2% fixed for 84 months, which was the 7-year option. Staff, after looking at it, is recommending that to conserve cash, that we do take the 7-year option.
Okay. I think doing my math, if we take the 5-year option, we save about $7,500.
Okay.
So we will save money doing the 5-year option.
Well, correct. I just didn't want to, I didn't know, that's why I asked for both. Because when the dealership, through their factory, theirs was based on a 60-month finance option.
Sure.
So to one, to get a comparable, but two, because 7 years, a dump truck for us would just about be broken in. Because we don't run that many miles on it, just gets a lot of use on the county roads. And then we would plan to keep it 3 to 5 years after that point.
Just some of the issue I have with the 7-year finance is we're financing something for 7 years down the road, and we don't know where that road's going to take us. And so we're creating an indebtedness, not knowing if that's going to really hamstring us in the future or not. So to me, the shorter the term is just more likable for my situation. But what do you guys think?
I mean, they're both good options. I mean, I guess I can see where Bill's coming from to conserve cash. But also on the 60-month option, we're saving just shy of $8,000, which is another, payment more than that actually. So, do you think if we go with the 5-year option, Bill, it's something, you can make work out Road and Bridge?
Well, we would have to use Fund 16. I mean, instead of taking the cash, instead of laying out almost $400,000 in 2 months, we would just pay it out of that.
Set it up on 5 years at that 2%?
And that would be fine as well. Again, I just wanted you to have both choices.
I tell you what, guys, this seems astronomically low for interest rates. We make money on our money in the bank just like anybody else does. This is really, really low. 2%. I'd imagine the savings of the cash will come in handy at any point for almost any other financing availability down the road. I mean, if it were a 3.95 or some of these other rates, I'd imagine. I'd be for a quicker rate, but at 2%, I know that partially why these can get as low as they do is because the banks don't pay they don't pay income tax on this interest. So, but at 2%, we make money on money, and I can't imagine anything being financed any lower than 2%. So, my suggestion would be to save cash, because almost anything else we would finance would be more than 2%. And we make a little money on that cash that we save. I imagine it's hard to lose at a 2% interest rate, and conserving cash I think is really important out at Road and Bridge right now in case we have any issues where I just can't believe on a depreciating asset that we can get a 2% rate.
So is it still kind of maybe you're going to cover that tonight, but I know you're still looking at, is it a grader and a loader this year out there, or is it just a grader?
Well, we were specifically looking at a grader, and I talked to the county administrator. I think we're going to put the hold on that for a few months. And the loader was just kind of food for thought, because we will need to look at that soon. And as long as we were working with Caterpillar on the 2 graders that we already got, and then looking at another one, I asked them to give, at least that way in advance, we'd have an idea on what the number on the 950 would be.
We were also looking at doing a lease purchase on them, correct?
Correct. We were looking at the options. Well, on the 950, and they would offer that. We didn't even get that far because I really didn't bring it to the dollars on that, and to make sure that was what they just spec'd out based on what we've got now. Now on the grader, which would be it'd be a 140H, which now replaces it's the same as the 12M3s we just bought. That's what we had discussed, financing that as a purchase option.
Yeah, I did a little bit of math on, just the difference in interest rate, and over the life of the loan, just shopping our local banks, we would save $31,313 on the life of this note. So, I agree. It's about $7,000 more to push it 2 years, but I think over the life of the note, we're in good shape financially. Like I said, I couldn't hardly believe it when I saw it, and when we're able to get a loan at that kind of rate, I'd imagine the cash is a lot more important to us financially. I can't imagine anything in IT, any other department in our in the county that could get this low of an interest rate. So that's just the finance in me. I think that this is something at 2% we push out kind of as much as we need to, because I don't know what our revenue is on our bank account, but I imagine it's close to 2.
That I couldn't
Lisa
tell you
would
off the
probably
top.
be able
Lisa,
to tell you.
I don't know if it was in her report here, but one thing I would just like to express, I guess, doesn't have it on her last statement. Saving money over time and having cash on hand is important as long as you have the cash.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing I'd ask the commission to consider when you look at either a 5 or the 2 different time frames is if we have cash on hand, and you'll see that tonight in the budget forecast that 5 years from now we're in the red, and we wouldn't have the cash, so we'd have to start looking at those cuts. So when you start thinking between in 5 or 7 or 8 years, it may be best based on current forecast that you look at the shorter option to get it paid off while we know we have the funds. And I know there's a lot of variables to that, but at the same time, if you don't have the cash to pay for it at that point and we don't pass a sales tax election, it could be hard to pay those in the future. You know, you're stuck with that debt when you sign that note.
The big question I would have, Bill, I don't see anything on here about a early payment penalty.
No.
You know, that's another reason I think you give yourself time, and I think, you know, a sales tax election can completely change how we view these things, and we start talking about fighting down debt and things like that. But yeah, with no prepayment penalty, I think I just can't hardly get over how low this is. So I would like to borrow money at that rate.
It's an excellent rate.
So anyway, that's where I'm at. I think a long-term note and possibly a rediscussion, you know, after an election cycle about attacking the note a little quicker. But cash on hand makes us money, and I'd imagine it's around 2% that we make with cash on hand if I'm remembering the finances of last year correctly.
Mm-hmm. So you're pushing for the 84 months?
That's what I would say. Essentially, if your cash on hand's making you about 2%, this is a free loan over the life of the note.
Dean, you going to change your mind or anything?
I'm one of these guys that don't like debt, so I like 5 years.
Yeah. Well, I kind of am too. Yeah,
I see where Dustin's coming from. I mean, it makes sense to spread it out.
I do too, and I understand that
I can
completely.
also see where Darren's coming from, and I'm just, I'm a person that don't like debt,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. Do we want to hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the low finance interest rate of 2% fixed for 60-month finance option.
Do we hear a second?
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 2-1.
Do we get an extra commissioner?
No,
Okay, just checking.
I was thinking about Darren. 2-1.
We don't let him vote.
Yeah.
Any other questions, commissioners? Thank you very much.
You, Bill.
Okay, county administrator recruitment. Darren.
Well, once again, we're talking about the county administrator process, hiring a new administrator. The last meeting, the commission asked that I would reach out to 3 specific consultants, one being the Kansas League of Municipalities, the other one being the Austinbaugh, I hope I pronounced that right, Consulting, and the third being Austin Peters. Austin Peters, when I had visited with them, they felt that they were not in a position to be able to assist the county at this time due to several other hiring processes that were going in. They currently just got done doing a process in Reno County, and looking at what they charged Reno County, they would have been the highest paid consulting group out of the 3 that were returned back to you. But the other 2 did submit proposals, and they're both in your packet for the commission to review and just see how your commission would like to proceed. Have one of them come in, both of them come in, or just select one and go with it. Or I think I heard from the past that the commission would like to visit with somebody, so I just looking for direction on how you'd like to proceed.
Dustin, did you have anybody else that you had in mind besides that Kansas League of Municipalities or not?
No, that was the one that I had a Leadership Kansas classmate. She is a lobby for the League of Kansas Municipalities, and they're right there in Topeka, so she does meet a lot of them. But I would say that the League of Municipalities is typically cities that are members, if I know that right, it's city organization. Although I was somewhat impressed with their packet as far as cost structure and things of that nature. And then when I was comparing it, I had kind of kept something that has been in the back of my mind. I had a department head talk to me about you know, how important it can be that we look at somebody with county experience, because we don't have an assistant administrator in that position. I think that's been a problem in the past in the county, is if the transition of a city manager to a county manager, it can be a whole different animal. And sometimes they struggle with that transition if they haven't spent some time in assistant administration. So, in looking through the Ozenbaugh one, it looked like mainly they were hiring city managers from the looks of things. So
He was, when I talked to him, he said that's all they've done. They were just gonna start doing county ones now, but he had a lot of good contacts, it sounded like. I think.
well, he did come very highly recommended, right?
Yes, and they probably all advertise in the same place.
Yeah, yeah.
At the end of the day.
Well, as I read through both of those, information on both of them, I thought the Ozenbaugh one was just more direct and simple to me. A lot more confusion out of the League of Municipalities, and I think it would have cost more too.
I mean, I guess I'd like to talk to one of them in person. I've talked to Don on the phone, but
Yeah, I would prefer
I'd like to shake their
Ozenbaugh.
hand and see him in person. I wouldn't
Sure.
know if he walked in the door.
Yeah.
Darren, which one would have ended up? I thought I got the letter, well, the first letter from the League of Municipalities said it ends up being about 10,000 if we become a member, because the membership due is $1,000, but it's $866.10, and then Ozenbaugh was, I thought it was a little more.
You're going to find variations with both of them based on what kind of services you provide, how much they want to research and send it
how
out. They're going to
hands-on.
have reimbursable expenses, like Dean said, depending on who they all advertise it with, how many trips they come out here. It's going to be varied. So
Okay.
saying one's going to be this much, we're not going to be able to tell you that based on until after they come out and the commission gives them direction of how much you want to advertise, how often they want to meet, how many they want to interview, etc. And that all plays into their prices.
And Commissioner Schleier, you thought possibly, just from the stuff you read, it could be that some of the overages would come from the potential for,
From the league.
the league, the things that they would spend, yeah.
That's what I seen in there. There was a
Okay.
lot of
I saw these options,
A lot of
yeah.
contingencies in there.
Yeah.
And that's what I read too. It looked like they had a few more built in.
Yeah.
To
Lot
me, it
of-
looked like they could be up around 14,000 maybe.
When I talked to the city of Hutchinson, or was it Reno County, their estimated cost with Austin Peters, from what she was telling me, was around, if I remember right, somewhere between 16 and 17,000 overall. When we used Austin Peters, basically 10 years ago, Bill and I looked up in CIC, and it was estimated about 13,500 10 years ago for them. So 10 years later and at a lower price, kind of gives you an idea where we're at. And some of those options of that entire list that I gave the commission last week, those were some of the lower options on the list of how much it was going to cost to get somebody, because a lot of them actually go by like 25% of their annual salary, which, depending on how much the new administrator could make,
Sure.
well over 25,000.
You know, I think meeting somebody face to face works a lot better than these, and I'm perfectly, I would say this Ozenbaugh, if they would consider a meeting with us and come in front of us to tell us what they do and how they administer.
Mike called Don and asked him, did I ever give you that number?
Yeah, so currently Don, he's a little out of commission, but we don't have a meeting for a couple weeks. His wife just had surgery.
Okay.
When I talked to his partner, John Deerdorf, he's the current city manager of Hutchinson. They're the two partners in it, and he said that he would strongly recommend coming out and visiting with the commission before. You'd find it a little bit questionable if you didn't ask him to come visit with you before you would hire him.
Okay.
Well, definitely. I'd
So-
like to shake his hand and see who he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would help me as well with the decisions.
So, yeah, see if you can set something up.
Shall do.
Okay, we have refilling positions of employment. Darren.
The county commission had several different topics or discussions over the last month or two in regards to preparation of the budget. The commission have come up with different ideas on how to approach different financial constraints that were coming. And it has been brought up several times that we need to consider at not necessarily a hiring freeze, but the commission needs to approve any future hires just to make sure that we're going to be able to maintain those come 2021 with the sales tax and the budget constraints. So I put this on the commission's agenda for the three of you to discuss how you would like to proceed with your different ideas.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice to have the department heads request if they could fill a position. We're not gonna call this a hiring freeze by any means, but at least we're aware of the positions, and if for some reason we don't think a position should be filled, we can always say no, but I would definitely like to have department heads.
And I know we can't control elected officials, but I think it would also be in their best interest to come before us before they fill a position to let us know what their
I
intentions
think
are.
so too, yes.
And I think that could be sent out in a letter, Darren, to let them know our feelings on that, you know, we can't tell them what to do with their budget, but it'd be, I feel, in their best interest that they would come before us and let us know.
I think definitely in the best interest of their potential employee and their potential hire. I think our blessing would help in the budget process to know, you know, the necessity of the position and whether or not it's something that they should immediately try to rehire. Just for sake of the potential employee, I'd hate to have somebody come on and then not be in the budget, make a move, do things like that with their life without knowing for sure what next year looks like.
Yeah, potentially any new employee could be laid off the following year.
Yep, yeah, and I would hate to do that to anybody, so
Absolutely.
at least a discussion would be great if it's admissible to the electeds and definitely for our crew, so.
I will give them a letter sent here hopefully this week.
Okay. The next agenda item, fiscal year 21 budget discussion. Darren?
Well, I believe Mike is setting up our TV screen. So I don't know how we want to address this. In the years past, the commission has went out and sat in the other chairs, so that way both the audience as well as the commission can see what's on there.
Darren, before we get to that, do we have an individual here that was going to talk about a road vacation in Catherine?
Brungart?
Yes.
Mr. Brungard?
In the back.
Okay, well, while we're waiting for that, we can see,
You could come up and
yeah,
that way you don't
Mr.
have to
Brungard.
sit through all the budget and everything else. Bill Ring, would you like to accompany him up there too? Because you'll be able to shed light on that.
Andy Brungart. I'm a resident of Catherine, Kansas.
Andy?
And I guess the reason why I'm here at the meeting is just to find out a little bit more what you guys were thinking of on the vacation of basically a block stretch of St. Francis Street out in Catherine. And I just want to know, what I need to do. Last I heard, Bill, you was talking about there was other options, or council was talking about other options, and I just want to know where I'm at on this.
Okay, Bill, can you clue us in on this situation?
I think I'm the only one that knows about it, maybe.
I do, I've
You know
got
about
an
it?
email, yeah.
Yeah, I know a little bit about it, but
Okay, Bill Ring, Public Works Director. I sent the commission a copy of an email that had the overview of the area in question. And at any time, Mr. Jeter, jump in. As far as when you vacate a road, there's basically two ways to do it. One, the commission could make a decision, someone could present, and you have the ultimate authority to say, yes, you can just do it. Or you can do it the second way, which we've done a few times in the past, where there's the road viewing, public hearing, et cetera, to get input from the residents or the neighbors or the farmers in the area, how they feel about what someone is asking for. Now, Mr. Brungart has done the petition, which was, he gave the Donna, but it still lacks a few things which we explained that he should hold off on because there will need to be a survey taken. That it has to be incorporated in the legal description of what he's proposing you vacate. That could cost, I'll say $1,000, based on some of the stuff, just some of the survey work we hire out.
A survey is not on a road vacation as long as you can view the area where the road, as I understand, it's not an improved road. It's just, okay. As long as you can determine approximately where the right-of-way is, a survey would not be required unless you ultimately decide that you need to agree to vacate the road. Then a survey will be required to establish a legal description. So that's not a cost.
Right,
It
but
needs
it,
to
but
be
it could
incurred.
be if you decide you don't want to do it, or, depends on how you feel about the concept. But that would be the burden of the survey would be on the resident or the residents, because there's another gentleman in front that would be
Effective.
Chrysler.
Yeah.
Mr. Chrysler. That would be involved in that. And then I have had some feedback from some other people that live in that area that would like to discuss it in public as well.
I need to hear all the options in. As far as that goes, there's other people involved in it too. I mean, we need to hear all the above before we can make a decision on that.
Correct.
I'm pulling up the email, Andy. It's farm ground behind where that road would end, correct? Yeah.
Farm ground to the east.
Okay,
on
yeah.
St. Mary Street, basically.
Okay. It's right at the edge of town, yeah.
This is his residence. He owns the others. That's farm ground there.
Right, okay.
Will any of the other residents be adversely affected?
They could be, it would be, I think I measured it on our GIS tool. They would have to go 400 foot basically to the west, to then go behind it to come around to the backside, because there is, and Commissioner Roth's got it, there is a right-of-way that runs along the east side of the property.
He owns this,
He owns all those in yellow.
and this is the vacation.
That's the vacation right there. And this road runs behind
Is
it.
the vacation the full stretch of that, or it just in between the two properties that?
Be
you own?
between the four lots.
Oh, between all four, so clear
Three
to
in
the-
yellow and the one in kind of a reddish color. That's Mr. Chrysler's property.
And Mr. Brungard, the reason you want it vacated is you just want to own the property? Is that the situation?
Possibly, maybe in the future down the road, I would like to add on to my shop on the north side.
Okay.
Okay.
I know that this is not a, come in and talk to you and go home and you're good to go. I know it takes time, so
Yeah.
sure to get the ball rolling. I don't know what it's gonna cost, so I wanna get part of this out of the way. That's what I wanna do.
Well, that's what I want to avoid for you in whatever way we can. I want to make sure that we've got everything in line here before you start spending money on surveys or anything like
Right.
that.
Right.
Right. So where do we need to go next, Bill?
Well, the easiest way, which is kind of where I got involved in it, because the petition was filed by Mr. Broomgart, and knowing we've gone through this process before, it's easier for the commission on its own motion to vacate a road, which is kind of what then I suggested maybe we ought to do here, because off the top of my head, it looked to me like that there weren't any issues here, but of course, there may be from other landowners and residents out there. Ultimately, regardless of whether the petition is acted upon or the commission on its own motion, it's got to take commission approval. So one thing you could do is the commission could consider vacating on its own motion, but request that it be put on the agenda as a kind of a public hearing to hear comments from others
Mm-hmm.
before you make that decision.
I like that idea.
And I don't
That
think
idea
at,
too.
at this point, there shouldn't be any expense that Mr. Broomgart has to go through unless you actually decide to vacate the road, then
Okay,
he'll need to pay for a survey.
okay.
So does all the adjacent landowners have to be notified then?
Legally, no, but I think they probably should be provided some kind of a notice that they're,
Public
that
hearing?
the court, that the commission would like to hear from them if they would like to appear.
Okay, so we need a motion for a public hearing then.
You need, no, what you need to do is just direct the county administrator to put it on the agenda,
Okay,
and for Donna or Bill to provide some notice to neighbors out there and any interested parties.
okay.
Mr.
When it's-
Broomgart, your neighbor there that would be right by this vacation have you spoke with them?
The one to the west of me, he's on my side. I mean,
He's okay with it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the most directly impacted, I'd imagine, is that house.
Yeah, and that's, I don't know who else is gonna be affected by it
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it just would have, if, I guess, if it was gravelled or whatever, then it'd be where they can go from St. Martin over to St. Mary Street,
Yeah.
basically. on
But
the
they're
north
not
side.
doing it now because there's nothing there.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody knows that they gotta go around. And half of the people that I went and had signed that petition, they said they didn't know there was a street supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And most of them residents have been there longer than I have,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. Bill, from your perspective, would vacating a road such as this lead to any kind of a precedent that could get us onto something here?
It could start a precedent in Catherine, because there's lots of these short little streets. It could do the same in Munger. We have similar issues, could in Piper, and the unincorporated towns that are out there.
Sure.
There are a lot of old right-of-ways where it was going to be a road and it was never a developed road.
Mm-hmm.
So, whether there would be anyone else in a month or a year, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a good way to go about it from a case-by-case circumstance. It gives people a chance to come if they have any objections to it, and we can see if they're reasonable objections and go from there. But
Well, let's do as Mr. Jeter says, and we'll put it on the agenda, and we'll get a public hearing about it, and then we'll decide.
First week in March or something like that?
Second, the 9th through the 16th are our meetings in March.
I would ask for the 9th, only because to get it done, I will be out of town the last week of February. So it would be coming into the meeting, I listened to a certain commissioner.
And I will actually not be here March 9th, but you guys can call me via conference call. It's not a problem if need be.
Sure.
I'll be available.
Okay.
I'm okay with the 9th, yeah.
So, Mr. Brungar, we'll put it on the agenda for the 9th, and we'll come to a conclusion. How does that
Will that
sound?
work for you?
Same
And
time.
then, same time, yeah, and you won't.
Yep. You
And
can
you won't
come
have
or
any
you don't have
expense.
to, but this should be an opportunity for anybody to say their piece with us before we make a decision.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right, thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready for the budget discussion?
That's affirmative. I thought maybe before we go out there, unless you'd like to see some of the numbers first, if there's anything specific that the commission would like to discuss in regards to what the preparation of the budget is, or if you'd like to see some of the numbers first and then make your comments, it's
think-
completely up to you.
I think the numbers are important.
Well, they are. And it's like I told Darren earlier, I mean, that 5-year plan's great and a 10-year plan's neat to look at, but you have a $20 fluctuation in the price of oil, them numbers don't mean anything. The 5-year or the 10-year plan, it changes everything.
It can change, absolutely.
So it's, I mean, they're great to look at, but, you know, if something happens with the price of oil, et cetera, the numbers will all totally change in a day.
But you're just speculating too.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I realize that.
I mean, if, you know, from my perspective, we have to look at just what's in front of us right now.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that could change,
Oh, definitely. For the good or bad.
good or bad.
Yeah, looking at it from my perspective, it looks like there's $400,000 to $500,000 we got to find just to stay base level right now, and I guess maybe we'll see that. And in the discussion I had with Darren is, it's $400,000 to $500,000 we got to find in our budget because it costs more to employ people every year, and we can't expect to get lucky on health insurance. We can't expect any of that kind of thing. So. But yeah, I'm happy to look at the numbers, and I guess after we do that, we can discuss
Sure.
which direction we want department heads to start looking at.
I did.
A little warmer down here. Yeah. Just was hoping not to be on camera. All right. So there's a couple different ways we can look at this. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see the numbers. The main thing is what you don't want to see is red, going into the red. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, at our current level of expenditures, this is our budgeted forecast that we're going to be trying to working on for 2021. Assuming everything's said, and kind of like as Dean explained, you have no idea what's going to happen in the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years. But just going off the previous trends of how the previous administrator has budgeted, as well as trends in healthcare, what the commission has done past for pay increases, you can see this is our budget, our prepared budget for this year. It would increase about $600,000 for next year. The way everything sits right now, assuming nothing changes with the tax lid, assuming nothing changes with healthcare, that we're going to be experiencing a 9% increase in healthcare, assuming that we would give a 3% pay increase, which that is not the direction that the commission has given, assuming 2% increases in the general fund expenditures as well. If you look at that, $600,000, that continues to climb throughout the years. Come 2025, at the end of the year, we don't have enough money to fund the general fund. We're about $325,000 short. So we can start making different changes to this. And in all reality, that's not that far out. It's only a couple years. But when you start looking at the changes we make today, when you compound them out several years, if we were to decrease these numbers within the general fund expenditures, if we decrease them by about $450,000 this year, once we get out to 2025, that $450,000 that we save now equates to about $1.3 million then. So you can see that would push us, that can continue to start pushing that out. That's just reducing the expenditures. That's not changing any of the different revenue. You know, if we increase revenues, the sales tax, if we look at different, capturing different increases in revenue for the treasurer's office on the interest that we receive on funds, that changes that. So my plan here is just for you to start and to remember how that looks. In the end of 2024, we are in the problem where we don't have enough money to carry over to fund the complete budget in 2025. So if we start, let's assume best case scenario. Let's just talk about the sales tax. If I come up here and I look at the sales tax, we're going to assume both of them pass. We're based on 2017 estimates on what the city of Hayes collected between those two sales taxes. You'll get about $1.5 million for the healthcare tax and about $650,000 from our portion of the general purpose tax. If we take those two funds into account that we actually receive in both those sales taxes, it pushes that red all the way out into 2030. And the reason that's actually out there is because our sales tax would actually sunset in 2030. And if you look at the revenues for that year, they're also decreased because of when it would expire. We would lose 25% of that year's sales tax unless the commission at that time would continue to have another sales tax election out there and it would pass. That would, those numbers would change in that portion. So you can see, even by doing nothing except for the sales tax alone, the sales tax is not necessarily enough to cover us over the next 10 years. Let's go back out. I'm going to delete those back out. Another hot topic that we like to discuss, I must hit the wrong button, is the tax lid. The tax lid, as the commission knows, last year we were able to increase the revenue for property taxes by about 1.5%. And as you can see there, we went from almost 0.7 million to 14.9 million. So that's about $230,000 that we were able to increase revenues there. Now, from what I'm seeing and what's on the state website, is we can increase that to 1.7 for the max of what we can go to for the property, the tax lid laws. But if you can see, that was once at 14.9 million, 14,911. Now it's 14,940. That only gains us about $30,000 if that tax lid gives us a $30,000 breathing room. So overall, that's the restrictions of what the tax lid gives us, and it doesn't really help us a whole lot. It just only gains $30,000 in revenue. Another thing we can look at is the commission is aware of, the treasurer's office has done, let's see if I can find it here. If you look at this line here, I'm going to go across here. In 2019 alone, we had less than $300,000 budgeted for revenue for this line item. But what's actually happened is the treasurer's office is actually investing those funds more rapidly and aggressively, and those the revenues that we're seeing there are almost tripling what we have budgeted. So one thing that we could do, as you can see over the years, it decreases all the way back down to 80,000, which is what the used to be done about 3 to 4 years ago. If we could have, it's an election cycle, so we may not have a new treasurer in the next election cycle, but if that new treasurer or the same treasurer could continue with the same rates, or maybe just a little bit of a decrease, we could increase the budget line item there to help better recognize those revenues. So if we did that and I just clicked on that box. 200,000 is what is in the projected budget. If we only budgeted for half of what she did last year, and then we carried that out over the next 10 years, those update, scroll all the way back down to the end of the year. If you look, we really don't have a general fund problem until 2026. So the revenue right there alone, as well as the tax lid increasing from 1.5 to 1.7, pushes that out. Another thing that we're looking at in reducing expenditures is our health care. If you look right there over the years, just because we've been experiencing it, is about a 9% increase. So if you look at these columns right here, right now, the county, we have budgeted for about $2.5 million is what it's costing us for county health insurance. There's two line items, because one is for the public safety employees and the other one is for the regular employees that are under capers. 2.5 million is what we're projecting with the same, if we stayed with the state plan and we come all the way out here into 2030, you're looking at 5.9 million. So you're going from 2.5 to 5.9 million with the current rates that we've seen increasing over the last several years at 9%. Now, you can go back into here and you can look at best case scenario. And if you remember these numbers down there at the bottom, the sales tax is taken back out of this. we could change that. I've reached out to the city of Hayes just to look to see what they've experienced over the last 5 years. They're not on the state healthcare plan, and they have a consultant that they work with that works with different brokers to get them the best rates for health insurance. They seem to think that they could save us several $100,000, and all the consultants that we visited want to save us money. But even if we split that rate in half, if we don't see 4% increase, or 9%, we could split that down to 4%. The city of Hayes, 4 out of the last 5 years, have seen cost for their health insurance decrease. And up to, I think their highest rate was like 3.9% decrease. So in their 1 year that they had an increase was only like 1/3%. So I'd like to say that is positive, but those line items right there have a huge impact. If we were just to split that from 9% to 4%, that pushes us out farther along as well. And if you come back in here as well, I'm going to change that because that is an estimation. I'm going to come all the way back up here. That's not official yet. So I changed the property tax lid back to what it was. I changed the health insurance back to what we've been paying. And I took out the sales tax because we don't know that as well, the results of it. If we come back in here, in the commission, from what we've been talking, or from our discussion, is the commission would like to see the budget, the expenditures stay the same as they were in 2019, or in 2020 and 2021, and not to see that. So if you do, you're looking at about a $600,000 cut from where we've been previously budgeting for the several years. 2 years ago, the county commission cut $1.4 million out of the budget. And last year, it was right at $500,000. So it's almost $200,000 or $2 million out of the budget that has been cut just over the previous 2 years. And if you look with doing nothing else, with no assumptions that we would get a sales tax, we get better insurance rates, the tax lid gives us a little bit of breathing room. And you want to maintain status quo with no expenditure increases, we need to cut roughly 6%. Now, what this number down here, 6% from this number, that doesn't actually, that doesn't actually mean that all of that is there right now. What that is assuming is what from the previous years, that those expenditures have been increased. So if we want to have to come in here and get these two numbers to match with pay raises that are already budgeted this year, we're going to have to come back up to these line items and make cuts. Now, I know it's hard for department heads when the department heads ask, we want direction. What do we want to see? Several years ago, we were given a number. Yes?
Would that be 3%?
Well, depends on how you look at it. If you leave the money if you take money out of one area, which is where it's budgeted for pay raises, and you put it into the actual pay raise column, which is up here, this is going to increase their budget. So when you come back in here to contractual, commodities, capital, and contingencies, it makes that 3% actually more because you're increasing their line item here, but you have to reduce commodities and cap more. So if you look, correct. And like I said, it's hard for department heads when you tell them you need to make a 4% decrease, a 6% decrease. I'm not giving out any suggestions. I'm just looking at numbers. We'd have to come in here. I'm going to look at my screen while I do this. If we cut this, each line item in contractual, capital, commodities, just take just a second. It's going to show you. Cutting 4% already, and you're still about $140,000 over. The way this is figured is currently in contingencies and transfers, that's where part of the money is budgeted, But when you come back up here to salaries, it's also budgeted as well. So you actually have to come over here and decrease this line item to 0 because it's already budgeted. That's just for this year. In future years, you'd have to put that back in there. But if you look at 4%, that would actually get you lower than what you would actually need to. So when you start looking at direction on how far you'd like to go, I mean, that would be 700,000 at roughly 4% to get you below where we're at currently. That still allows for pay raises because the pay raises are in this line item here, which would be transferred back up to there. And when you come back over here in the future years, we'd have to input the number into this column. It's just a mathematical Excel spreadsheet. But it still includes for pay raises for that. But if you look, just by doing that change of the amount of money, you push all the way out to 2027. So a $700,000 expenditure now could be worth more than $2 to $2.5 million in the future. I'll go back in here and I'm going to delete these. Make sure they're all right. You see that number just gradually creeps back towards us. The main thing we don't want to remember is if that sales tax does pass and I input those numbers back in there, it's not necessarily the magic bullet. That would be one heck of a sales tax, wouldn't it? It brings us back to there, and that's with no other assumptions changes. That's just looking at what the sales tax could do over the next couple of years. It doesn't increase our coffers, but that includes general increases over expenditures compared to what the market has been doing over the last couple of years.
And that assumption is with a 3% salary increase over those years, a 9% increase.
I believe that's still in there. Yep, 3% is still figured in there for the employees, and then 9% for healthcare. And those numbers that you see there at the bottom, basically that accounts for a 3% increase each year after for contractual, 2% in commodities, and about a 0.5% increases in capital each year after that.
Can you scroll down to the CDBG for that?
I'm not sure what number you're wanting to look at, but
Sales tax would expire in 20.
yep. As you can see, if I scroll back up here to the top, these are our revenues. If you see the revenues start decreasing, and that's that $300,000 difference right there because we're only collecting 3/4 of the year that year, not the full entire year. So you could look at this best case scenario. You could say we're going to hit the tax lid every year. Both sales tax are going to pass. We're going to fix the amount of pay raises that the employees get. We get a good proposal on health insurance that could even match what the city of Hayes does and maybe go for a third of what's projected here at only a 3% increase each year rather than 9%. And you could say we're going to toe the line for a couple years and not increase the budget. And then these bottom lines, you'd see no red, and you'd actually see money, your unencumbered cash at the end of the year start growing. Because as you can tell, even as the current expenditures that would be each year at 2% for commodities, 3% for contractual, only a couple years do those increased revenues start to they don't get outweighed by the increase in revenues, and we start dipping back down from our unencumbered cash by, we max out at 11.3 million, but we start continually growing or digging into reserves again.
Darren, can you scroll up to the treasurer from that perspective?
Oh, I still have all those in there, so I apologize.
300.
At 300,000 per year.
If I put more cash on hand, that should go up.
And like I said, in 2019, it was right at 600. That's not fully interest gained on investments. There's other revenue fees that they get within there, but it's still shortly that. If I close this, way I don't mess up any of the numbers. I'm gonna show you another thing. One of the questions we had, we were out at the in-service day with all the employees, and some of the questions that were asked by the employees is what happened to our unencumbered cash at the end of the year. And if you look at it, this graph right here I put together last night, you can see our budget since 2016, it's decreased, obviously. If you look at our unencumbered cash at the end of the year, it's also decreased. And this is the first year over the last 5 years that we had a decent enough year with enough cuts that our unencumbered cash stayed flat. But it would be nice to have this start trending back upwards. Even if we continue to cut here, if we don't match revenues, that line ain't going to grow very fast. But so that was one of the questions we had from their employees. Like I say, as we sit now, if everything were to go as planned, that's where we're at. Is there any other estimates that you'd like me to change or see within there?
What was our COLA this year?
1.6%. I'm not, that's what they've, I don't know if it's actually out there as official yet, but that's what they're estimating it to be. It is official, they made it, okay.
You put 1.6 in for the
Well, if we actually did that, so that's why I say this changed the forecast a little bit. I'd have to actually come in here and put that in as 0, because our line item right here, this is what we have budgeted, 4.1 million in salaries. Well, actually 4.7, almost 8 million in salaries. That money that they would be getting this year for pay raises is actually in this line item. We don't transfer that money from the budget stabilization account until the commission approves the budget, or the 1.6 COLA, if that's what it is. That money would actually come out of this account and then go into individual budgets and then come back up here. So if you took this number, then these numbers would come back from there. And if you want to, the previous years, you've been planning for 3 last year, or for this year, it was actually started at 3%, is what the commission had budgeted for. And as the budget process went along, it was reduced to 2%. For every 1%, you can estimate for employee raises for every 1% was $80,000. So we, at the beginning of the budget process last year, we had $240,000 in that budget stabilization account, and it was reduced to roughly 140-some thousand this year. After some of those changes, I guess that's minus some of the changes that we made for the elected official salaries.
Does this include our lessening of our portion of health insurance coverage?
No.
Is there a way to do that on this graph?
Not on this one. So this is like a,
I guess you could do it if you went from 9% projected down, but I guess you're taking out 3% of 9. It's not much.
yeah, you'd have to go like maybe 8.8% or something.
Yeah, figure it out a little less, I guess. Maybe just do it at 8. We're hoping to do a lot better than 9%.
It doesn't change the year at all.
Back to our health insurance on the outside.
So Janet and I have met with 4 different consultants, and if you remember, we originally talked about looking at different brokers. And the problem with working with the brokers, they don't technically work for us, they work for the insurance company. So we called in 4 different consultants. The consultants work with the brokers because the consultant works for us. If our health insurance goes up, the brokers and fees go up. So the consultants will work with the brokers, they'll get some information back. We meet with those 4 consultants on February 27th and 28th with the Wage and Benefit Committee. And then after that, hopefully by the 1st or 2nd commission meeting in March, the Wage and Benefit Committee will have a recommendation to the commission on who to work for. And we're hoping within the next 2 months, by the end of the next budget, next round of budgets, or the second round, I should say, we'll have some of those numbers to be able to plug in to each individual department's budget to figure out what those savings could be.
We'll have the numbers in April.
We'll have some estimate, but it's probably gonna be more towards at the very end portion of when the second round of budgets are due to your commission. We have to notify the state by September whether or not we're staying on the state employee health plan. We're hoping to have final numbers before you see and meet with the agencies for outside assistance before then. That's why I asked to get this process going now, so that way we can have more of time on the back end for what the results are with the health insurance.
I've been doing a little bit of research on that, and I think if we could get off of the state fund, it is possible on high deductible policies to save quite a bit of money, and then use the savings to get a secondary policy for our employees that actually minimizes their out-of-pocket. It's actually less than the state plan. It's a little complicated, but it could be potential quite a bit of savings.
Darren's working. Considerable savings.
Yeah, I like the idea of savings, but even better insurance sounds great.
In a best case scenario, we can come off the health plan, work with, I'm not gonna say that one consultant, but a consultant who can get us a better health care coverage at a lower rate for both the county and the employee.
Yeah. Yeah, your max out-of-pocket is way down.
And those are when the consultants will work with you, you know, some of the options may be is, the county employees might like to push for generic prescriptions at zero cost, but, name brands at a higher percentage. You may look at reducing your deductible or your co-pays. Those can all fluctuate, and they'll be able to look at those numbers and see, well, this option's gonna cost so much. Also, the incentive programs, that was one of the downfalls 3 years ago when they did it with the healthcare, was the incentive package. 3 years ago, would have cost, if we would have came off the health plan, it would have saved the county, I believe it was like $40,000, but would have cost the employees more because they didn't take into the account of the premium discounts that our employees do by doing the health incentive program. But now, since then, we've collected our annual data for claims, and then they have other ways to help determine the health of your organization by going through questionnaires, not just based on your previous year claims data.
I think if we can factor in our health department in some way in that too, I think that there's a real opportunity there. It's probably something that's more up Jason's alley as he gets his feet wet over there, but I've heard of other counties, Finney being one, saving considerable amounts of money by utilizing their health department for their employees.
We did bring that up to all the consultants to say whatever kind of services, whether it be like the incentive package, to utilize the health department. Can't force employees to go to the health department, but you can offer it at a lower price. Be better for them. It would be revenue for the health department. It would be increased revenue off the general fund for the revenue from the health department. So those are basically all the numbers. I don't know if you can, I can keep this plugged in over here too.
Can I ask a question there?
Yeah.
What did you use on the commodity side for, like, for me, the largest expense I have is diesel fuel. 20-cent increase in diesel fuel.
It's 10%.
That is a $40,000 increase.
Yeah, currently a 20-cent increase would be a 10% in your
Right.
in your fuel cost. And the commodity is listed at a 0.5% increase. And it's very likely.
Fuel's down under 2, and gasoline's down under 2, but the way it fluctuates. And again, it also depends on how much, we're out moving snow and different things, the figures are very hard to figure out.
It looks like he's factoring about a 5-cent increase in diesel fuel per year from that, which is so hard to predict.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a guess.
At least we're factoring an increase, because I can't imagine what our budget looks like in this county if diesel is going down more than it is. And unfortunately, we rely
And
on
now's the
oil.
time to lock it in, especially your dyed diesel. I mean, it's $2 a gallon,
Wow.
So some of the questions that the department heads specifically wanted to have the commission address. The first, although you hate to throw out a number or a percentage, they would like to know that if the commission has an idea of a number or a percentage, that they know now rather than later, or at least an overall goal of where to get to now instead of later, so that way they have more time in their initial budget to be able to account for that. The second question that is out there, and it impacts different departments. It actually impacted some departments this year. Some of the departments are actually over budget because of retirements. As you know, when the retirements come through, well, Mike had several of them last year in IT. Some of those payouts can be $20,000, $30,000 a piece by the time you pay out PTO and all that. We know that Donna's retiring at the end of the year. We know that the sheriff is retiring at the end of the year. With that, as an elected official, we know that there's terms expire, but as well as, well, Lisa asked me if she has a retirement, should she plan for it in her budget or not? Mm-hmm. And I guess one thought that I would have there is it's hard to plan. I would say not to put it in the budget, but if we know for sure that there are individuals that are going to retire, and as budgets get cut tighter and tighter, and that those funds aren't going to be there, those need to be maybe added into the budget stabilization account, so that way if the funds are there, or if the retirements happen within that year, they can then be transferred into the budget, and if not, they can be set there and held in reserve and then rolled over as unencumbered cash rather than unspent budget authority in somebody's budget.
Yeah, road and bridge concerns me on that, and I think, Bill, hopefully you got a handle on those potential retirements. Lot of long-term employees there, and you know, I agree with budget stabilization. I think that's the fund we go to with that.
Bill Ring, Public Works. The county administrator, I have talked about that. That's, I think, where one of those questions came from. Part of the issue is you really can't pry too deep
Right.
into if somebody is or isn't. I mean, if they come to us or they start to indicate that, and then we can say, well, what are you thinking? I can't run around and say, are you going to retire this year?
Yeah.
I mean, and at the same time, with, you know, the aging, you know, the age of the employees increasing. I gave you that about a year ago about where we were at, you know. At any time, and I'm second now out there in age, I've got one ahead of me, any one of us could get sick. Again, we don't know. Mm-hmm. You know, we went through that a number of years ago with Mr. Graff. So, you know, it's very difficult. You know, how do I attempt to even begin to say, well, is Dustin going to retire this year, or is Dean going to, you know, you just can't do it. Mm. And I know it's a good question, but I haven't found a way to ask it yet.
Yeah, it kind of hurts morale. You keep asking a guy every year if he's going to retire soon.
But we are you know, we have been looking at those and trying to, you know, factor in some numbers as to, you know, if, you know, this group of folks decided, or some of them did, trying to come up with, you know, because we also talked about the landfills, another issue, which is outside the budget. But again, you know, we've got a gentleman out there, and he's indicated it'll be another 3 or 4 more years. He's got 38 years in. Mm-hmm. So at any time it could change.
Well, that's just a consideration that we'd given you. You know, more specific to maybe the clerk's office, as we know an elected official is mm-hmm. retiring and not running. Having that significant of a payout, I guarantee you without a doubt that office will be well over budget in 2021.
Sure. Gentlemen, what are you thinking in terms of direction to the department heads?
Well, I have a number in mind. I don't know if it's aggressive enough, but I feel like we have a lot of budgets that are going to be really close, that are basically all staffing. And those budgets are the ones that I think we should be asking about a 1% decrease from. initially to start the process. And then frankly, the big budgets are the ones we're gonna have to find that extra couple $100,000, from my perspective, EMS, Public Works, and Sheriff. You know, this is one of those things where we at least gotta ask, and they gotta be candid with us about what that looks like. It doesn't mean that's the end. Obviously, there's a potential for revenue, but right now, I see 1% across the board, and then a little bit more from Road and Bridge, or Public Works, EMS, and Sheriff. That's where I'm at to start. I don't know how you guys feel.
Dean?
I had a 2%, but I guess I look at it a couple ways. We can't take 2% from Road and Bridge. We have chiseled that department every year since I've been a commissioner. It's time to put money back in Road and Bridge, or we don't have to worry about EMS going anywhere because they can't get there because we don't have roads. We need to figure out how we're going to generate income in this county and put money back in that department starting now. I mean, you can't keep cutting. Since I've been on as a commissioner 12 years, I'm gonna say we've probably cut, out of them budgets over all these years, I don't know, Donna probably could maybe help me out. I bet we've eliminated $3 million out of the budgets at least since I've been here. You can't continue that way, guys. There's no way. Nobody likes property tax raising, including myself. I can tell you I have a lot of property in Russell County, and that is the highest place around to own property, I'm telling you guys. It cost me $16 an acre to own a piece of cultivation over there, just my tax. Here in Ellis County, it's $8. I'm at half price, you know, and we have to look at ways to generate income. We can't keep cutting, or there's no reason to have Jason unless he's gonna stay in the city of Hayes and do local calls. He's not gonna go to the county because Bill Ring ain't gonna have any roads for him to drive on. We have cut Bill Ring's budget, Mike Graff's budget, God bless him, forever. Every time there was money to be donated, it come from Mike Graff. I can tell you guys many times, and Donna remembers this, he'd volunteer $80,000, he'd volunteer $100,000, he'd volunteer $200,000 to help balance the budget. You cannot continue that trend in this county, or there won't be a county road left to drive on. One of these days, Bill's gonna come to us, and it isn't far away. There's a bridge that's gonna need replaced north of Ellis one of these days. When he replaces that bridge, I'm probably totally off on the estimate. It's gonna be $4 million, maybe more. So are we gonna close that entire stretch from Ellis clear to Zurich? That's gonna, and granted, Zurich's in Rooks County, but are we gonna close it all from Ellis to the county line? There's a lot of people that live out there that rely on that bridge to come to Ellis to bring their crops. There's a lot of companies out of Zurich that haul grain, et cetera, Palco, Zurich, to Waukene, to Hayes, et cetera. So are we gonna send everybody over to 183 and bring them down that way? You guys will have no idea what your phone, when it starts ringing when you say you're gonna close that road. And that's just one. Catherine Blacktop, it's gonna be another one, as Bill knows. Ellis Blacktop south of Ellis, there's another 8-9 miles. Are we gonna work on it? We gonna just close it? What are we gonna do? I mean, the list goes on. We cannot keep cutting from Road and Bridge. Them days are over. And I think Bill will agree with me, them days have ended. We have robbed that account, I bet in 12 years, $500,000, maybe more. Bill might even know the answer.
I'm trying to pull it up here for you real quick.
Are you?
on our
Okay.
CIC.
But I mean, it is. I mean, we can ask all of our agencies to cut 2%. We're gonna have to have layoffs if we continue that trend. So what are we gonna do? 4-day work week? I mean, that's gonna be another option. Is the county gonna be open 4 days a week? I mean, that's gonna be an option. And that's the things we gotta start looking at. This cutting is great, and it's worked a lot of years. Cutting's over. We need to figure out the other side of how we're gonna generate income in order to provide all the services we provide in this county. And we provide a lot of services, and they're all great services. I don't wanna cut any of them. I don't wanna go back to having 2 ambulances service the county. That'd be a disaster. It'd be a true disaster. You know, we need to figure out how we're gonna fund Jason and his staff. The Ellis County Sheriff's Department, same deal. I mean, it's obvious there's more people around here now. We gotta have, you know, them on patrol to help us out. I mean, it's a deal where we just can't keep cutting. We have to figure out a way, it's gonna be the opposite, how we're gonna grow it, to provide the services we provide. I mean, we provide a lot of services in this county. They're all great services, every one. EMS, Health Department, Sheriff's Department, Public Works. Can't be without Public Works. Can't be without a county attorney. We gotta figure out how we're gonna fund that department. I don't care which department it is, we gotta figure out how we're gonna fund it. You know, cutting another 2%, sure, that'll help us out. Sure, if we can save $200,000-300,000 on health insurance, that'd be huge. That'd be awesome. I'm waiting to hear back from Darren when he meets with the consultants where that ends up. I mean, I'd like to keep our budget exactly where it is today. And I think we could talk to each of the citizens in our county and tell them, I think they would understand if we keep the trend we're going, they're not gonna have a road to drive on. I hope they don't leave the city of Hayes, because once they do, they're gonna be driving on rock roads everywhere they go. We won't have blacktop anymore because Bill can't afford to fix them. You know, I think the chip seal 1 mile is about $11,000 maybe?
Double that.
Okay, 22,000. That's 1 mile. Bill has a lot of miles of blacktop in Ellis County. So do we start eliminating blacktops and go back to rock roads? I mean, that's,
Bill and I were out talking about that exact number. If you look at the 140 miles that we have of asphalt, it costs about $1 million a mile to pave a new road. He estimates about $400,000 a mile to do an overlay. We have 140 miles, and they last, he said, about 7-8 years. But I put it out for 10 just to look at it. If you take those numbers at just doing overlays, not any new roads, Ellis County alone needs to put away, or Ellis County, for a single purpose of being able to do that every 10 years, needs to put $2.6 million in the coffers just to maintain our 140 miles of roads. If you look at our 200 bridges, and I know that some bridges are going to cost $4 million, but if you do an average of one bridge, and it costs $1 million, we have 2 bridges, they last 75 years when we get them inspected. We'd have to put another $5.6 million away per year to cover the bridge replacements. If you combine those two together, you're looking at $8.2 million a year, which is twice the current budget of Public Works. So we were sitting there putting those numbers together, so I thought that was some good information, especially when we go out and start talking about sales tax, of how much of a gap that we, just within that department, that we do have.
that's why when we go to these town hall meetings, guys, I mean, we need to lay it out to all the residents that show up and let them know what's really going on in the county. I mean, everybody has the convenience of driving great roads in Ellis County. I think we have some of the best roads by far in this county, because I drive a lot of miles every day, guys, in surrounding counties. I'm telling you, Bill and his staff do one heck of a job.
Well, Dean, I agree with you 100%. I don't think there's, in these budgets, there isn't money to cut without getting into personnel. And some are worse than others.
Oh, exactly.
You know, the clerk's only has 4.5 people in her department, and our register deeds only has 3. No, there's no room for them to cut. Same with county attorney. And as I was talking to Darren this afternoon, I told him I wanted to see them budgets come in lean as these people can make them. And based on what sales tax does, we're going to have to get out our pencil. And if that means shorten the work week, or if that means looking at certain departments and maybe laying people off, that might happen. But I think the days of just this general, let's do a cut across the board, I think we're down to the bone. There just isn't nothing there.
And I think in that sales tax promotion also, Butch, I mean, I think we need to be real, careful on that when we, tell the general public that, if this doesn't pass, this is what we're looking at doing also, in the presentation, that we may have to lay people off. We may only be open 4 days a week at the admin center now. Just going forward, so they understand that.
Right.
And it's not a pretty picture, and granted, like we said earlier.
There are some things in the budget that I think we as a board need to address. And one of those is we have this policy in this county where paid time off counts as time worked, and people can get overtime based on that policy. I think it's time we look at what the private sector does, and that's just a foolish policy to have. Paid time off should not count as time worked. It is paid time off. And
I agree with that.
and that would cost some people some overtime, but it would come with some savings too. Now, as I mentioned that, we always have to realize that we're going to have a separate conversation with EMS, because their overtime is just all configured, or their PTO is all configured into their salaries. So it's going to take a different conversation with EMS. But I think that's something as a board that we really need to address. Another issue I was thinking in the county budgets, and what I want to see in the county budgets is operational expenses. What it takes to operate this department, that department, whichever one it is. Some of the things I think the department heads could really start to look at eliminating would be conferences and conventions. Some of them can be costly. They don't necessarily create an asset as far as coming back and operating your department. And I think the further away from home they get, the less true that is. They just cost more, and we can save some money there. The department can still operate if we just look at the operational expenses. So I think the department heads need to have that direction too.
And I mean, I think elected officials do too. I mean, we're going to
Sure.
conferences in Washington DC, we're going to in Florida. I mean, really, I'm thinking
Yeah.
there's same conferences more on a local level they can go for training.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, I think being smart about what car we use, maybe even a policy that they use our county car. And if two people are going the same direction, they ride together in a county car, or they pay their own way. A lot of times when I go, I just pay my own way because I'd like a little freedom to be able to do other things after I leave. But you know, I don't expect the county to reimburse me if I do that type of thing. So, but yeah, and obviously, you know, this is a discussion that has a big question mark on it. And so, you know, when we look at that, I think that's important. I think we should look at peer counties and their sheriff operation, their EMS operation, their public works. I think in our minds we know where money can come from, and that's a discussion we have with the voters. And then they make the ultimate decision on whether or not road and bridge is funded the way we think it should be. I think we're all infrastructure guys. We think any of this cutting should probably go towards filling potholes and taking care of roads, especially, and I think for the people of Hayes that don't spend a lot of time on county roads, sometimes they don't realize they're on a county road because it's directly by their house. So I think that 3 mile zone will be an interesting conversation with the city of Hayes over the next year. I think if we can get that understood, what is ours, what is theirs, what we should maintain, and create an agreement between our commission and their council and commission, we'll understand our budget a lot better at that point and be able to, you know, pan down these numbers really well. But, you know, from Public Works perspective, I'd really like to see what contracting some of the work would be, especially, you know, if we talk about a time when the oil field isn't up and firing, there's a lot of dirt work equipment in this county that is privately owned that could possibly be used on our county roads, and I don't want estimates, I want quotes. I want to see what the cost per mile would be, because the beauty of private contractors is they don't have health insurance to pay, they don't have these big retirements, they don't have you know, time that they leave. They can do it in the middle of the, you know, evening, stuff like that, where a county worker has a pretty set schedule, and I think we could see some aggressive numbers and maybe a potential for savings. I know that Bill has told us it's a nightmare. You gotta be able to keep on them and make sure that they're doing the job that they're contracted to do. But I think there's a real opportunity in Ellis County for that.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to take a look at it, see where it lands.
Well, Bill and myself did that 2 years ago. We kind of looked at some different options. I think it's probably been 2 years ago by now, and Yeah, when we did that, I was just thinking of that for one, and then we looked at, what else did we look at that time? Something else too.
Basically, it just had to do with mowing. We compared some of the state numbers and looked at that.
And it was surprising. I mean, Bill did a lot of research on that, and it was surprising it wasn't as cost as effective as you'd think, other than you eliminate a $130,000 mower. But at the end of the day, as long as we keep everything, we keep our mowing tractors for what, 10, 12 years or longer. At the end of the day, you know, it really didn't save any, but there's definitely
And then
we
you
could probably look at.
realize that then you're going to need more supervisory skills because we and you three, we're responsible for the condition of those roads. So we're going to have another Kurt or another Dave to go out to make sure that they were done the way we would do them, for the fear of the liability if it wasn't taken care of properly. That's all on us.
And it's just things to consider, but yeah, we did look at that 2 years ago also.
Yeah, I believe we had a discussion about grading last year.
And it's, again, you just gotta have somebody, like he said, you gotta have somebody go out and check, make sure they are doing what they.
And I mean, in talking to, you know, because we talk with all the contractors almost daily. I mean, they're all jam up with work right now. So if we work at their convenience, what do we do when, you know, a citizen calls the office and says the stretch in front of my house got washed out because of the rain last night? Or they call one of you and say the same thing. We don't have that where I can control, if you will. I can go out and say, hey, we need to get somebody over on this particular road. There's a bad stretch. We lose all control of our roads, of who's going to fix them when.
You know, I wouldn't think you would want to contract the entire operation, obviously.
Oh, I don't think so either. But again, if you pare down, if you did it in half, we still have half to be responsible for with half the people. So we don't have the availability of, you know, we never have extra people. But if I can say, instead of get out in your territory, can you get over on 210th because it washed out again, okay? Or on your way out to your territory, can you just kind of, you know, touch it up a little bit till it dries out and we can get, you know, the man that's got that area, maybe he's doing a different road. I mean, there's a lot of logistical considerations. And then the other thing to consider is that the best time to grade a road is the day after it rains, 2 days after it rains. When you get to 3 days, you've lost, and that's another thing. So again, are we going to be at the whim, if you will, of a contractor for when they, you know, that they'll come out when they can to work our roads because they have other jobs to consider? I mean, there's a lot of logistical considerations. You know, to be discussed. And how would you contract with, you know, a dirt mover with what he considers acceptable for the road and what we consider acceptable for the road?
Yeah, there'd be some training definitely to make
I mean,
that
it's
ever happen. But I think, Darren, if you go through and just show us all what a 1% across the board would look like, a 2% across the board, and at least give us something to look at to start with anyway.
Well, as long as we have a number that the commission would agree upon, whether it be whatever percent, I'm sure the department heads will do what they can to get that for you.
We'll probably look at two different options. I mean, a 1 or a 2. Dustin wanted a 1. I thought a 2. What do you want, Butch? You want a 1.5?
Let's start with a 1. I think a 1. That's a starting point.
Well, that's something to look
And,
at.
and again, we don't want to see any budget increases. And as we're saying that too, I think that holds true for the outside agencies. They need to sharpen their pencils too.
Outside agencies, you'd be looking about $9,800 reduction there. I believe that's about what we were just under $1 million in funding for them last year.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot more appeasable this year than it was last year. It was
Yeah.
a lot heavier than that last year, I believe.
It was.
If I could also ask, just get clarity on one item, on the hiring that was discussed earlier. I have 2 open positions right now. Do you want me to come back and, are they still in the loop, or do you want me to come back and bring, I mean, the mechanic position's been open since July. Or are those still, are they, let's call it, are they grandfathered in because you already said it was okay? You let me just tell me what.
How'd you hit with your budget last year, Bill? How did you end up?
We usually have about 10%.
So the pre-audit numbers, Bill's, so it's kind of a tricky answer. Before POs were made, they were about $467,000 under budget, which is about 10% under budget. But once they started creating their POs for paint, for rock, for asphalt millings, they're actually, and then we have chargebacks from 2020 to 2019 for payroll. They're actually $85,000 over budget.
But we haven't bought everything. I understand that the POs
Say it's a
are,
tricky-
they're sitting pending the audit. But that's how we get our supplies, based on whatever we can save during the year. Like we PO'd, what, 125 in rock, or 100?
I can't remember
I
which
can't
line
either.
item, but
I mean, that's a big number for us to PO that out. So if we can only afford out of the carryover, what we didn't spend, we'll have to spend out of budget money. But we try to save as much as we can and then use it for cones, asphalt, mixing, for rock. I mean, you name it. But that's about the only way we can afford to keep all that in stock, or to cut the cost on the road project. And then, I mean, realize this year we put up $800,000 to cover the road, the new road, and we're planning on putting up probably a match to that. So my road fund, there's roughly $1.5 million that's gone from there.
if you look at what our budget, the sales tax numbers that we're looking at for the general purpose part of it, we're estimating about $650,000. If you look at what Bill's not budgeting for the end of year POs for asphalt, for paint, signs, culverts, chip seals, it was roughly $500,000. So you can see right there, $500,000, if you actually budgeted for those line items, would almost eat up everything we would get from that quarter-cent sales tax. And that would still leave them with zero budget authority after that. I mean, it would free up some, but it would basically transfer that around a little bit to get them back onto the into the black instead of $90,000 in the red.
Well, let's see what happens if department heads cut 1%, and they need to let us know if that's going to result in layoffs, so we know that.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we put pencils to things, we'll try to straighten everything out. How does that sound, Dean?
Perfect.
Dustin?
Yep. And Bill, to answer your question, I'd say if you get a application, maybe you have all of our numbers. I'd imagine, depending on the quality applicant, if you think they can save us some money, would probably be appeasable to it. So,
If we got a good mechanic, it would definitely
Yeah.
save him money. He has,
yep.
I think, fully equipment out there every day, working on something.
I don't think you want me calling you, asking your opinion on something like that. Or
If he needs a decision, it needs to be
I need
the
to
three
make,
of you. And
either I need a decision now, or I gotta come back. I can't be, correct, Mr. Jeter? Okay. I can't talk to you and get a yes and, and try to, that,
Answer's yes from me if you get a good applicant.
Same here, Bill.
okay. That's fine. I just don't want to get any of us in hot water.
Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item, sales tax election presentation. Darren?
Just basically in front of you is a list of presentations that the commission has asked that we schedule throughout the county. We have 2 in Ellis, 2 in Victoria, 1 in Munger and Shinchin, and 3 in Hayes for a total of 9 town halls. I've heard back from Butch and Dean, in regards to your availability. I need to meet with Dustin to get yours on which ones you can attend. Of all the 9 town halls, I believe I sent you an email. They will all 9 be listed as open meetings, so that way all 3 commissioners can attend, and they will be publicized through the clerk's office. The ones that aren't highlighted on your sheet are just different luncheons and different meetings throughout the day that county staff will participate in. However, if I know Butch has mentioned one or two that you'd be interested in, and I'll send out a new list after I get those updated from everyone.
Yeah, March 11th is the only one town hall meeting I won't be at.
I plan to be at that one. Darren, I've got notes by all the ones that I believe I can be in attendance at, all in my district and a few out of my district. So
I will. I'll call you tomorrow. Try to finish that up, and then
I
get
can even
something sent
hand you
out.
this tonight.
Okay.
Okay. County Administrator report.
I think I've talked enough tonight. Just want to mention today, county staff spent all day out at the fairgrounds doing some in-service training. I felt it went good. I don't know how everybody else felt. There was some good information shared, and that's why I'm in jeans and a polo today. But other than that, the projects, give you a quick update as normal. The EFIS project is done, and I've got an agreement with our architect for the law enforcement center. That project is done and has come in about just under budget. We reduced a little bit of EFIS in regards to just painting some stuff. Unfortunately for the elevator, it got postponed again. We're looking at maybe receiving the part in late April, early into May. So that's going to prolong us some more. We're looking at a different option of being able to replace the equipment and just using the current doors with the current opener until the equipment gets in. Until I hear back, I don't know if I'm fully supportive of that idea, putting in new equipment and using used parts. But we are holding payment to help emphasize the need that they need to get the work done. And then we had a kickoff meeting with the restrooms at the courthouse last week, and hopefully by mid-March those will get started. And they're thinking about 45 days to completion. They picked out the colors for the stalls and the urinals and the toilets and all that, so that all should be on site before they get started. And they'll be noisy in the courthouse for a couple months, but they will work through it. Other than that, that's all I have, except for tomorrow night is our first town hall meeting over in Victoria at the VFW at 6 p.m.
Okay. County Commission reports.
I got a conference call tomorrow at 2 o'clock with Workforce One, and then Friday I got a KAC board meeting in Topeka at 8 a.m.
Okay. Commissioner Ross.
2 things from me. Have had multiple discussions about the Northwest Kansas planning and development with people around. Still weighing what we should do, and I had a little discussion with Bill Jeter on the phone the other day about potential changes to their bylaws for our reconsideration. Frankly, this year I don't know that we have anything in the budget in terms of trying to reconsider, but I think that we should at least give them an option to change theirs and reconsider next year. This is for something you two to weigh on. My thought is a cap in contribution of $25,000. I don't believe that because we have oil under us that it's harder to write grants for our communities. So, and I actually have heard of a few more opportunities for cities like Hayes to apply for some of these grants. It's a bit of a challenge, but something that could be possible. I think that's something that we should consider as possibly going to their board with. And like I said, I don't see funding this year for it, but if they were to make those changes, I could definitely reconsider, especially after we see some census results in a couple of years. The second thing, I was able to attend the City of Hayes' meeting on Thursday on a vote of 4-0. One of our employees had to recuse himself, but they approved funding for Northwest Business Corridor on the cash that we owed them from excess sales tax and 200 to the amount of 284,000. It was great to hear them. It feels like their commission is running very smoothly right now, setting through their meetings. It's exciting to see that, and it was exciting to see that they're have some commitment to this project now, and nothing but positive words to what it can mean for the city of Hayes and the county of Ellis and all of Northwest Kansas. So that's all for me.
Okay, and for me, I did spend an hour out here at the fairgrounds today talking to county employees, talked about the budget and as well as sales tax. Darren participated with me in that, and we didn't sugarcoat it to anyone either. So I think it was well received. We had a lot of questions, and we'll go from there. Okay, executive sessions. We have 3 of them.
Correction, Mr. Chairman, we have 4.
We have 4?
You want to do this one first? Is that why you just handed it to me?
It don't matter. It was just an after Tom Drees asked to add that in there.
We got it.
Probably do Tom's. Tom's got 2 of them, right? 3 of them?
I have one for Tom here.
Okay, if Tom's included in this one also, maybe we could do Tom's
Do them together.
first.
Okay.
I move that the Board of County Commissioners recess into executive session under the following exception of the Kansas Open Meeting Act pursuant to the attorney-client privilege exception. Subject to be discussed during the executive session is a tax abatement. Persons to include is Lisa Reed, Tom Drees, Darren Meyer, the 3 commissioners, county counselor. No. I guess that's it.
Okay.
For how long?
How long, guys? How long, Tom? 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it does have Tom and Bill on this one, so. I move the Board of County Commissioners recess to executive session under the following exemption to the Kansas Open Meetings Act pursuant to attorney-client privilege exception. The subject to be discussed during executive session is pending litigation. Open session will resume in 15 minutes in the commission room. Those persons to attend, in addition to the Board of County Commissioners, are Tom Drees, Bill Jeter, and Darren Myers.
Second, I'm sorry.
She's not in executive session
She's the
anymore.
door person.
Yep.
None of us have a card to get back into place.
This isn't
Aye.
what we need, Scott.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're the next one.
Donna, no action.
Okay, thank you.
Now will be this. Okay, we don't have all the names on here, but I'll get them. I move the Board of County Commissioners recess to executive session under the following exception to the Kansas Open Meetings Act pursuant to the attorney-client privilege exception. The subject to be discussed during executive session is pending litigation. Open session will resume in 15 minutes in the commission room. Those persons to attend in addition to the Board of County Commissioners are Scott Brown, Darren Myers, Tom Drees, and Bill Jeter.
I second that.
All in favor? Aye. 2-0.
All righty, thank you.
Opposed. I think that'd be great, honestly, you know?
No action.
Have a good evening, Tom. See ya.
See you, Tom.
Got the other one?
I
Yep.
think I wanted you to call me when you have time.
Yep. I move the Board of County Commissioners recess to executive session under the following exception to the Kansas Open Meetings Act pursuant to the non-elected personnel matter exception. The subject to be discussed during executive session is a personnel matter. Open session will resume in 10 minutes in the commission room. Those persons in attendance, in addition to the Board of County Commissioners, are Bill Jeter and Darren Myers.
Second your motion.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Gotcha.
Okay, no action and meeting is adjourned at 7:50.
Okay.
But I'm in town.